Augmenters, I'm Julie.
And I'm Jimmy.
And we believe authentic, connected relationships are the key to growing to your potential. Today, we are joined by Sam Donner, content creator who wants to inspire wonder for the world through platforms like the Finding Founders Podcast, the OKOP Show, and 100 Friends on Jubilee Productions.
Wow. Sam was like an entropy explosion on the AugMentors show. Going from mechanical engineer to content creator, Sam is really showing a path for how Gen Z can continue to connect authentically with others. And Sam understands a lot of those complications for Gen Z in talking to strangers. Sam gets over that fear of failure by going out and making 100 new friends in 24 or 72 hours. You can see that on Jubilee Productions. But also, Sam gives us some great feedback on how to maintain consistency in relationships. It's not just removing your fear of failure to meet somebody new, but also keeping in touch with folks. And Sam has a wonderful definition for wisdom. He calls it curiosity compounded over time. And we get a huge heaping dose of wisdom throughout the show, even diving into the differences of how to do interviews with porn stars and nudist colonies. Surprisingly, not the same. Regardless, Sam isn't afraid to open the kimono and give us a fantastic view of how to remove your fear of failure, pick up the phone and call somebody, and start creating content to make yourself happy and allow others to shine in this world.
Before Augmenters get started, here's a note about CEO School, hosted by Sunira Medhani, brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, audio destination for business professionals. CEO School is committed to closing the gender gap and helping more women level up by sharing stories and strategies from powerful women in leadership. A recent episode I loved was The Path to 2%, your seven-figure CEO roadmap. Sunira shares effective techniques for setting goals that turn into action and share strategies for mapping out your time and energy. As a female CEO, I absolutely loved this episode. Listen to CEO School wherever you get your podcasts.
Here we go. I think we need help we want you to mentor us on how we can ask 100 people to be our mentor.
Well, I mean, like, the first part is getting over your fear of rejection. I mean,
that's not so bad. I've been rejected way more than 100 times.
Okay, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. But the thing is, like, now compact that rejection into the span of like a day or 72 hours and be prepared for people to be mean to you, to your face in the streets of either like the few places I've done it. I did it. So the 100 New Friends videos have been done at UCLA, which was kind of on easy mode because it's at my like alma mater. Then it was at a Trump rally in Tennessee. And then it was in England right after the Queen died, or like with British people. And then it was BYU with Mormons, which was actually very, very fun. Oh, and then New York.
Was there in New York?
New York. I forgot about New York. Yeah. And New York. New York was so fun. I love New York. New York is like the most energetic city ever. And I feel like you can the key is just going up to random people and saying you want to be friends. Like that. If you're looking for the secret ingredient, it's that, and being able to do that a bunch of times. And then I guess from that point, it's the classic how to win friends and influence people, ask people about themselves. And then at the end of that, you invite them to a party at a stranger's apartment that's 200 square feet.
And New Yorkers, I think, also, like, they're just used to bizarre. Like, they have like, you got your goat walking down the street. It's like, fine. No, just like stay out of people's way, and they don't care. And everybody's like used to bizarreness.
Yeah, I was the least weird thing happening in New York that day.
Yeah, like far and away.
Yeah, very far.
You had all your clothes on and you weren't like salivating on people. You're like fine.
I have maybe sometimes like spat a little bit in talking. So maybe not the salivating part, but I at least had all my clothes on. It was rather cold.
They were probably just happy to like have a friendly person talking to them.
Low key, New York gets a bad rep for not being friendly, but it's super friendly.
No, they are. Friendly. They also just want to be useful. Like they want to be helpful. Mm-hmm. So like if you're doing something that they can actually have a part in, they're excited to help.
Yeah.
But what I loved about your videos, Sam, like going through all of them, and it actually really relates back to what we do at AugMentors, is about connecting authentically with others and growing to your potential, is how authentically you were connecting. You seem like, even though you were like dealing with 100 people, there was there's a lot of authentic connection that came from you, I think. And we even had that experience of you on Finding Founders. Where do you get that from? Like, where is that sort of deep interest in people and like ability to connect?
I have to give my parents like a ton of credit for that, because both of them have, like my mom and dad have been like instrumental in like crafting that value system. Like my mom's from Australia, my dad's from the US. They met at a youth hostel in Copenhagen and then started traveling the world together. And so like I come from, I mean, Australia and American culture, not crazy different, but it is across the world. And I think like early on, I was exposed to a lot of travel and a lot of different kinds of people. And I think with that was intensely curious. And then my dad also fanned that curiosity by like, I think giving me like a little bit of wonder for the world. I remember when I was like 6, somewhere around 6, we would go on these hikes in the mountains around Los Angeles. And he would be like, Sam, like, come over to this tree. I'm like, okay, I'll come over to the tree. And he's like, Sam, breathe on the tree. I'm like, all right, why am I breathing on this tree? But I breathed on the tree. And he's like, you just gave that tree carbon dioxide. And right now the tree is giving you oxygen back. And like, this is what the universe is. It's you giving and also receiving. And much like you're giving to this tree right now, you also need to give to the people around you and the world around you. And like, I think from moments like that of like this, like being in awe of my little place in the world, my ability to like give, I think it made me want to understand the world and understand people in a really deep way. And like, I think from that moment on, and a bunch of moments like that, like I was just like, oh, like I want to understand the world so I can give back to it.
Whoa. All right. That's amazing. That almost needs to like settle in for a second. You literally just said, Sam, you were in awe of your ability to give, being like crafting wonder for the world. How do you then keep that positivity when sometimes others aren't necessarily as excited to give back? And like you told us a little bit about how you've stayed connected with people so well. How do you continue to stay positive about those connections over time? Like, how do you keep that consistency?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think you can often get like really demoralized on being the person who is the one giving, or like, I mean, the classic one is like, I'm always the one reaching out to people, or I feel like I'm always the one like setting up events for my friends or something like that, right? And I think like
I always had to go over to my best friend's house.
Exactly, right? You can look at these and be like, oh man, like it feels maybe a little bit one-sided. And I think especially in like high school and going to college, I really would feel that. And I think there's 2 things that I think helped me get over that. And like one was just realizing like everyone has so much more going on than you, and someone's inability to maybe give back to you or give in any way is just because they need to focus on themselves, right? You need to have a strong base to build from before you can give to everyone, right? It's the whole idea of like, if your cup's not full, then how can you give to anyone else? Put your own oxygen mask on. Yeah, exactly. Put your own oxygen mask on first. And also it's just fun. Like I would rather live in a world where I'm interacting with people. Like, I think I'm very lucky and blessed to have a brain that enjoys those kinds of things and feels rewarded from that. Like at the end of the day, yeah, maybe like in one interaction, you will be giving more than you're receiving. But on the whole, you create a life that is just bountiful. And so like, I think what like the first thing is just realizing that other people have their other things going on. And also like, I just have fun and enjoy the process of like interacting with strangers and like, hosting events and mentoring and just like helping people who have been in my position before. The other thing I think that continues to cultivate that sense of wonder and like childlike spirit, and you can cut this if you want, but I think like psychedelics have been
preamble.
Yeah.
We talked about it before. It's all good.
Yeah, I feel like psychedelics actually have been pretty helpful in continuing that spirit. I think like psychedelics are one of the main reasons that I started to shift my career trajectory from being a mechanical engineer to being a content creator. I remember I accidentally did too much acid once.
How was the show though?
I was at a retreat like with my fraternity, which is not a good place to do acid, not the setting. But before going into that retreat, I was like, I kind of thought I had all the tools to understand the world. Like, it was like, okay, like I know what I'm doing. I have the tools. I haven't figured everything out yet, but like, give me enough time and I will. And the world doesn't have much mystery or magic to it anymore. It's just like, Everything's been figured out. And then,
and you like going down the path of like an engineer. Was this you kind of imagining yourself like down this engineering path, like
engineering, but life
going?
in general. Life in general. I feel like it was just like, all right, you wake up, people are a certain way, the world is a certain way, and I understand it all. It was very, very sophomoric view of the world. Then I had done like acid like once before, but like a half a tab. And then I'm like, I know what this drug is. And I do a tab and a half. And that sent me into like, it was a rearranging experience. And I had like a psychotic break. I didn't know who I was anymore. It was one of the most incredible and intense and like reordering things I've ever experienced. And it was like, it was this thing where, and coming out of it, it was super scary, but coming out of it, I was like, whoosh, wow, I don't understand the world at all. And like in that moment, it actually reintroduced this like mystery and this childlike sense of wonder that I had with my dad when I was like looking at the tree. It was like, oh, wow, like there's like so much that I have left to explore around the world. And there's like so much fun to be had in that exploration. And then there's also this feeling of connectedness to like the universe and your fellow man that you get coming out of one of those experiences. And I definitely don't think it's for everyone. I definitely don't think it's something that should be done often or abused, but I think it kind of allowed me to leave the hometown of my mind, explore the world a bit, and then I'm back in like the hometown, maybe a little able to explore the cities, but I'm not like rocket shipping to the moon too much. But it did give me the perspective of like this, looking back at this blue dot and being like, oh, wow, I am so small in this thing.
I love it. And Sam, awesome you're bringing this up because Julie and I have had a guest who also had a rearranging psychedelic experience, at least one. And I can't wait to make Julie guess in the outro who it was that I know of. I think I'm pretty sure there's one that Julie and I both know done the same thing. But it's a pretty powerful statement about changing from engineer to content creator because of dropping a tab. I'm like, I'm still a civil engineer, Sam. So be careful.
There's still hope for you, Jimmy. That'll be our next retreat project.
Put an acid in your water, Jimmy.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. And I can't even imagine. I love what you're saying about this sort of wonder, like curiosity about people, because I think that is actually where that connection, when you're really connecting with others authentically, it is really having that genuine curiosity. And I think because we talk a lot about mentoring or people coming to say like, hey, I don't know how to do this, or like, here's what's going on with me. You have to have that curiosity and you have to ask those good questions that really gets out of people what is actually going on and how you can be helpful. And I love that too, because I feel like there is a sense of like a younger generation being more disconnected and more snarky and like less like actually full of wonder and like excited about things. So I think just seeing how you connect with people and their enthusiasm with you is like, it's really beautiful.
I think like curiosity compounded over time leads to like that actually leads to knowledge and wisdom. And so I think where a lot of people feeling like you're stagnating, you're probably no longer curious enough. And if you're feeling like you're not learning from others, it's not that everyone's stupid or they don't get you. It's probably because you're not curious enough to learn the things that they have. And I think like what's great about mentorship and what a mentor-mentee relationship is just really like, someone is curious and then someone is willing enough to indulge that curiosity and explain some of the things in any way they can.
So one of the big pieces or where we see a lot of relationships fail in mentoring is that folks have this fear of either not being adequate, not bringing anything to the relationship, some kind of combination of saying, I'm scared of failing. I'm scared of not being enough for this other person, whether they're the mentor or the mentee. How did you get over that fear of failure? It's one thing to say, I'm prepared to get rejected 50 to 200 times to make 100 new friends. It's very different to actually go ahead and do it. Yeah. And then I have a follow-up.
I guess that kind of brings me to, or the first thing that I thought of was when I was starting my podcast, Finding Founders. So this is post acid trip, pre-graduation.
A magical time.
A magical time. I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life. Like absolutely no idea. I'm in my engineering classes and all of them are just so boring to me. And I was like making videos online a little bit, but like they weren't really taking off in any meaningful way. All of my friends were starting businesses because I was part of this entrepreneurship fraternity. And like I just was like, man, I just need to like talk to my friends about what they're doing so I can figure what I want to do. And so I sat down with a piece of paper, came up with a podcast name, called it Finding Founders. I like the alliteration. And I interviewed my roommate, who had a business selling caps and gowns to SoCal schools. And he was my first interview. And I learned a ton about him. I learned a ton about his business. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool, like learning about these other people.
We agree.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's super fun. It's like you get to absorb all this knowledge about someone's story and how they think about the world. And also what you have is every time you publish, and this could be a podcast, this could be a blog, this could be an Instagram, this could be anything where you publish to the internet. Every time you publish, you are creating a stronger resume for if you want to turn that into a job opportunity, or if you want to turn it into like a money-making opportunity itself. It like is something that builds credibility both to your audience, but to a future employer if you're just using it as a stepping stone. And so at that point, I was just like, okay, like I'll have a resume of people that I've talked to, and it'll be like job leads for me, right? And so my second interview, I think, was also with someone like, I think a family friend that had a business. And then my third interview was with the founder of American Apparel. And so to get back to your
oh my God, that guy, he was wild.
He is wild. He is wild.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And so how that kind of happened, and I'm going to circle back to like, how do you get over this fear of like not being enough, right? So I was in my dorm room with a friend, and we were listening to this show called Startup. And it's like, if you haven't listened to it, it's great. It's Gimlet Podcast. It was their first podcast. It's super meta. It's a podcast about creating a podcast company. The second season of it is with Dov Charney, the founder of American Apparel. And I had gotten through like 3 episodes of it. And this is like all building him up before like the rest of the season, where it's like, oh, like there's some problematic things with this person, right? And that third episode, I'm like in the middle of the episode, it's like there's this throwaway line where it's like, man, this guy's always picking up his phone. Like whatever it is, he's picking up his phone. And I turn to my friend, I'm like, there's no way he's always picking up his phone, right? And so I do some sleuthing. I find his number online. I call him up, and he answers me, right? And I'm like, and I'm totally unprepared because I was not expecting him to answer. And I'm like, hey, this is Sam. And he's like, yeah, what do you want? I'm like, I have a podcast, and I was wondering if you could like be on it. And he's like, yeah, sure, come to my factory like in a couple days. I'm like, all right. And so I go to his new company. So American Apparel, he was no longer a part of. And I went to the factory at Los Angeles Apparel and interviewed him. It was crazy, super interesting. And from that, I had the credibility of like a guy who had built $1 billion company, and I could just interview anyone I wanted after that. And so honestly, like in terms of how do you feel, like you're not enough, I think it's like a lot of people are down to help someone who doesn't feel like they're not enough, or has no idea what they're doing, or is the beginning stages. Like that's actually a superpower, because it's like it's saying that you don't know much and you're curious, and people love to indulge that curiosity. And I think something that's been really powerful in building the podcast is I came from a place of like, you're awesome, I just want to learn from you. Here are some of the people that I've talked to in the past, or when I initially got Dove, like I hadn't talked to anyone, or just my roommate and a family friend.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you didn't enough. Your roommate is a
that was enough. That was enough, right? Like you don't really need to talk to like huge people or have like this massive body of work that's read by millions of people. All I think I needed to show to get that first like big interview was I'm working on something and I'm curious about you. And that was enough.
Oh my God, Sam, you're blowing my mind, because I mentioned before I am a total cold caller. I will call basically anybody. Oh, yeah. I have like no qualms about it. I like I met my husband on the bus, and he didn't give me his name. I mean, he gave me his name, but not his number or anything. And I like tracked him down and cold called him. He was like, okay. Like you just don't know. You cold call. But I love also, you talked about my favorite book, which is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it is still, when we always ask people, what is the one thing you always recommend to anybody? For me, it's always that, because you had the key there, which is just ask people questions. If you don't know what to say, Like, you don't have to say anything. You just have to ask people questions and they will think they had the best conversation with you. And you almost don't have to say anything, because people really get stuck on that. They're really afraid, especially if they want somebody to mentor them and they see somebody who's doing something incredible. Like, let's say you did want to start an apparel company. I don't know if he would be the best mentor for you. I mean, I guess he did build a successful business, but like you said, there's some problems. But the fact that you're able to just, ask him that, it's incredible. If we're trying to give people advice on how to actually start that conversation, what would you say?
Actually, I had someone from UCLA reach out to me who was in my entrepreneurship fraternity. And
can you give a shout out, Sam?
Yeah. Sigma Eta Pi. Shout out to Sigma Eta Pi.
Sigma Eta Pi. All right.
It changed my life. It was great. I don't know if it's still great, but when I was at university, it was great. But this kid reached out to me. He's maybe like 4 years younger than me, something like that. And he was like, hey, I'm studying engineering, but I want to get into entertainment. And you're the only person that I can see in the alumni that has like had that path. And I was wondering if I could like talk to you and get some advice, right? In that email. And then I think he like gave some credentials or whatever. But really all I cared about was like, okay, he kind of was where I was at some point. So I can give him good advice. And he's like looked into me and he knows who I am and what I've done a little bit. And so like the fact that if you can create a connection between your life and the person who you want to mentor you's life, if you can create that connection and just show that you know a little bit about them and who they are, and it's not just like a cold email blasted to a billion people, then I think that's enough to get like, and I responded within like a couple minutes. I'm like, here's my number, let's chat. And we had this like, maybe like hour conversation about what he should do with his life. And he was super nice and like a really asked like a lot of great questions. And we kind of worked through what the options were like. But the main thing was like, don't worry about it. Like he's like, oh, like I have this test coming up. Like, dude, it doesn't matter. No one has ever looked at my resume or my GPA in college. They just care. Like the only thing that people kind of look at is like, oh, like mechanical engineering, he must be smart. That was like the only thing, but it doesn't matter if I got like a 1.0 or a 4.0 because no one looks at that. And I think honestly, like that kind of advice of like, it's going to be okay, but here are some of the things that you can work on now to get to where you want to go. I think that's like, that was invaluable to me when I was coming up. And I think it was super, super helpful to him.
I love it. I love it. So because it is right, that like, making a connection between you and the person, saying something's kind of smart, having a way to connect, not like, may we connect and you don't know what that's going to be. And then just sending it and just
going to send it.
Seeing what happens. Yeah. You just got to send it. Just send it. Or I loved how you heard that on the phone of like, he picks up his phone. So like actually just call him. I mean, can you imagine how exciting it is if somebody actually just calls you and it was a real person on the other end? That would be a little bonkers. That would make me a little bit nervous. But I love that. So thinking about something that we hear a lot is basically mentors are people who saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself. And that is what has really helped you grow to your potential. Is there somebody, of course, your dad, your parents, but somebody outside of that who saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself, and that has helped you grow to where you are today?
1,000%. I mean, there's been a ton, but if anyone has had any success, or if I've had any success, it's due to 1,000 people that have helped me along the way, given me a chance when I was just some snot-nosed kid that didn't know his butt cheeks from his nose. So when I was doing the podcast, right? And I had done like a couple larger interviews with some well-known entrepreneurs. And there was this one guy that I interviewed. His name's Kong Pham. He had a YouTube channel called Simple Pickup back in the day. And then he created a online course for entrepreneurship and also for YouTubers called Jump Cut. And I reached out to him to do an interview on finding founders. And when I was doing these interviews, I was like, I had built up a team at that point. I think I was like maybe like 15, 20 people. We had like this whole 8-week production process. We were editing it like This American Life or How I Built This. So we had like music, sound effects, like voiceover. It was like a huge, like a
on
big
location.
Production. Yeah, it was on location. I would go everywhere for it. This was pre-COVID. And so this guy Kong Pham responded. I went into his office and it was like a sweet office in Hollywood. It had coconut water and bars in there, had like beer that you could drink.
Coconut water.
It was. It was like to the night. It had like a large neon sign. I'm like, damn, this is a sick office. And we go in, I do the interview. And especially at that time, we were like A game. It was the only thing I was working on. I was putting like, I don't know, like 100 hours a week into it, every waking moment. Plus, the 20 people that were on the team, all working for free on this, and they were crushing it. And we were like, it was really, really good. I was super proud of it. And my favorite thing was when I would ask like someone a question like, how the hell did you know that? Like we went so deep into our research. And there was a couple times he said that, and he was just really impressed with, first of all, the interview, right? Then a few weeks later, we finished editing. We sent him the finished episode. And he was like, holy shit, Sam. Like, I didn't realize it was going to be like this. Right.
And you were like, bro, why didn't you listen to a couple episodes before I showed up?
Because no one fucking listens to the episodes. Like, they're all busy people. They don't listen to the episodes. And so he didn't listen either, but he listened to his and was blown away. He was blown away by the editing, the pacing, like everything. And he's like, I've never had someone tell my life story in this way, because we were telling people's life stories. And he's like, so like, I know you're engineering. Like, do you got a job lined up after university? This is because it's my senior year. And I did have a job lined up, kind of.
You did?
Kind of. I was going through the application process and interviews for a QA position at a engineering firm. What I would do, this is the job description. So I would go to different like factories that used some product, and if they were using it wrong, I would write them a ticket, essentially. And I was essentially like a meter maid for the like engineering, I don't know, factory sector. And so I would be absolutely hated. I would be like, oh, this is off the code. And I would, people probably yell at me. It sounded like the worst job. No offense to the QA engineering factory people out there, but to me, it sounded like the absolute worst job that I could ever do. And
not
so
the best use of your gifts. Not the best use of my gifts, no.
Yeah. And so I told him, no, I have nothing lined up. And he's like, how would you like to run the podcast production department at my company? And I'm like, yes, please.
Done.
And so I told my parents, I'm like, I'm going to run a podcast production like department at this company. Like, what the heck is this company? And it's called Jump Cut. Don't worry, it's fine. And he paid me like a really good salary for a kid coming out of college. And what I would later find out is he loved what I was doing, interviewing like entrepreneurs about like how I built this style. He loved that. He wanted to like look at a certain group of people through the lens of entrepreneurship, right? Life stories through the lens of entrepreneurship, like essentially like treat this group as the entrepreneurs they are. And this is like what, 2019, 2020. So he had me interview porn stars. And so
I was literally like, this is either going to like Scientologists, porn, or something else.
Yeah. So my first job out of college was interviewing porn stars. But it was tastefully done. And it was like looking at these like young men and women through the lens of entrepreneurship. And they were like making good money through like chatbots. And like I learned about the industry in a really interesting way. And I also learned how to like tell stories. And he was the first person that said like, oh, like you could do something you love and get paid for it. And like before that, I had no idea that I could make podcasts and just tell people a story for a living. And so Kong fam, shout out to you. He was the first person that really gave me a chance outside of my family that said like, I'm going to pay you for something you love to do. And it was so much fun.
I bet you heard some great stories.
Oh, some great stories. I mean, like this one girl was making like 100 grand selling her panties. It's insane.
Wow. Very scrappy. I'm sure she wasn't on the Etsy store.
No. She sold it through her own site.
Do you see?
Sam, I love the breadth on what you're like going through as you're like, saying, hey, we were in the entrepreneurship frat, but as an engineer, your buddies are selling like caps and gowns. You're deciding to tell people stories as opposed to that. When are you going to try to help people understand judo through podcasting? How is that going to come into your life?
Understand judo? Well, actually, it's funny you say that. So something that I love doing with finding founders. So like we initially started with just entrepreneurs, but like there was a point where like I was kind of talking to the same tech bro entrepreneur every episode. and really interesting stories, but just got repetitive after a while. And so I started to try to mix it up. And so we did a series in Puerto Rico after the hurricanes, talking to businesses that were affected and how they came out of it. Then we did a series on like nudist camps, about like how like these different nudist camps come up and what is it like to be like a nudist organization founder. Then we talked to like drug dealers who were like smuggling like hundreds of tons of cocaine across the border, people that were dealing heroin in the 70s and then like became like business owners later. And so we started exploring all these like different niches that I thought were super interesting. But really what it was is like, it was a way to explore the world and also learn a new skill. And so like I also did an interview in Cabo. I lived in Cabo for a month and interviewed people who are like diving companies. And so like I dove with these people and like learned a skill that way. So one of the things that I do want to do is I want to go to Thailand and learn Muay Thai and interview like different like Thai instructors that have like gyms and such. Cause I think like there's something to learn from everyone around the world. And like, if you're just open and curious enough, you can have these incredible experiences where maybe you're not learning judo, but you're learning Muay Thai and maybe fighting while doing the podcast.
And I also love that actually, if you study through business, like everything makes sense, because at the end of the day, like if you're actually looking at things from like an entrepreneurial small business perspective, like every culture is built on some form of a small business.
Of course,
that has grown, and that's like what the industry is. So,
and it's so interesting, the dynamics of every like these small businesses that exist in different countries. Like in Cabo, you have to pay off the cartel. That's like just their version or like a version of taxes, right? And it's like
totally,
like to me that feels crazy, but for them it's just like, oh, like, you know, it's the same as taxes. You pay the cartel. That's just how it operates, and life goes on as normal, right? And so like I think there's all of these. It's like the same, but a little bit different in an interesting way in every country. And so like finding out the similarities and the differences is so exciting and interesting to me, and being able to share that with an audience and being able to share people's stories with an audience. And also like, it's kind of like a free therapy session too. Like these people are finding things about themselves that they didn't realize, or connecting. They're like, oh shit, I didn't even realize this happened in my childhood and is now like affecting me now. So like, I think asking people's stories is such a gift. And that's why it's really easy to get someone on a podcast, because you're kind of giving them a gift of just like listening to them.
And I have to assume, Sam, you've learned along the way that it's a very different wardrobe for interviews at the nudist colony versus New Friends in New York City.
That it is. It can be the same, but you have to make sure that you know your crowd. And yeah, to that point, I did do the interview nude at the nudist camp.
Well, of course, that's the question I wanted answered. So thank you. We'll go look for that video, maybe on the same site.
No video. There's no video. There is audio of it though.
Okay, no videos. All right.
And a few choice pictures, but I haven't released them to the web.
Very well. Well, so speaking of not releasing, we have a question we often ask, which is, do you have like a no-fly list for when somebody's reaching out to you for assistance, kind of like how we reached out to you to jam and to learn from, you know, everything you've built with your podcast? Like, is there something that really kind of rubs you the wrong way?
Oh, yeah.
When somebody asks you, what is it?
I mean, this is not complete red flag, but if they spell my name wrong or my company's name wrong, if it's obviously like copy pasted, if they haven't done the research about who I am at all and it's just blasted out, I'm like, I'm not going to respond to that because you haven't taken any time to get to know who I am. And so it's an easy delete. My biggest pet peeve with people entering my inbox is just like people not taking the time. And so if you're actually looking for mentors, make sure you take the time to know who they are. It takes longer, but your response rate's going to be higher.
Love it. I'm also curious, do you give a definition for, and this is like forces us to kind of take a break from, you know, where we are right now. But like, if you can take that break in 2050, if we can catapult forward, how do you think mentoring will be defined? I'm not asking you necessarily to define it now, but like if someone said, I want to invite you to a mentoring group, what do you think that group's going to be like?
2050, I think it's going to be run by ChatGPT. And we're going to have, I honestly think that we're going to increasingly have more meaningful relationships with artificial intelligence. And I think like it's really important to start getting good at, if you're good at prompt making or asking questions, then you're going to succeed in this like new AI world. Gone are the days of
query culture.
Yeah, query culture. Yeah, I like that. Did you come up with that?
I just said it now. Yeah.
Dude,
I don't know
that's
why I've
great.
been saying query often this week for some reason. So you just
Query culture. I like that a lot.
Let's see who buys the domain first. I'm on it.
He's
All right,
literally
Mason.
bought the domain already, Sam.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Quick.
But yeah, like in terms of how it will change in 2050, I think it will be the same, but the people that you'll be getting mentorship from won't be necessarily older than you. They'll just have educated themselves in a discipline a little bit ahead of you. I think like as we go more into the future, the average length of a career will shrink. And so like you will have to have multiple careers within a single lifetime. I think it's already like, or my grandparents' generation was like one, maybe now we're at like 2 or 3. I think it'll be like 10 or something by 2050. And so what you'll be probably doing more and more is that you'll just be asking people a little bit ahead of you so they can catch up. And that's kind of already how like Web3 is now. You have these people that know a shit ton in like a very, very small niche. And then you just will like ask them a few questions, get caught up, and then hopefully move with them. So I think mentorship will be essentially like, I guess to put it in a short way, mentorship will be spread across a larger group of people, and it will come and it will be mentorship for shorter time frames. I don't know if that makes sense, but
I love that. I mean, I think that's really true already. I'm speaking as a Gen Xer here, like there's a lot of us that are already in our second or third careers, and like it's totally cool to pivot. But I can imagine, your generation. I was going to ask you actually. I know Jimmy has other questions for you, but like, what's next for you? Like, you've done so much at this point. What are you looking to do next, and who are you looking for to help you get there?
I don't think of my life in like a career path. I think of more of like project path. And I think that allows you to be pretty mobile and kind of like pivot when things don't work. And so, I mean, I've been delving into short form content. Right now, the products I'm working on Finding Founders, which is largely audio based right now. What I want to do in the future is I want to do way more video and have like high quality video on Finding Founders. Then OKOP is the comedy podcast. Right now, we just have one show. I think we want to branch out into a bunch of different shows and also make sure we're like really optimizing our YouTube strategy. And I think eventually OKOP will look like a network of a bunch of different shows that are using our formula for short form and long form symbiosis. And then 100 New Friends, like I want to be How to Win Friends, and I want to be Dale Carnegie for like Gen Z.
Please, would you? Oh my God, I will totally invest and be your number one cheerleader, because I am such a huge fan of that whole concept. And I think that you like that for Gen Z. Yes, 100%.
I think Gen Z needs it more than anyone else. And they're not getting it through, they're not going to get it through reading. And so I think that's in terms of the mission. I think that is becoming closer and closer to my heart. I think it's that I love doing 100 New Friends so much. And so being able to continue this year and really build out the community to a space where people are not only going to it for entertainment, but are actually like learning how to interact with people more effortlessly is like what I'm super passionate about. And I think like I have a competitive advantage in doing that. I love to do it. I think people need it. It's like that. I don't know, it's like the Ikigai, all the concentric circles kind of overlapping.
We're all about Venn diagrams here.
Yeah, I love Venn diagram. So I think that project is what I'm really, really excited to bring to the world. And again, it goes all back to the tree. Like I just want to give back as much as the world has given me and have fun doing it.
All right. If you want to do 100 mentors, we are totally here for it. We are like also bizarre, happy to make friends with random people and talk to anybody that is willing to talk
that's
to
how you have an
so.
interesting life, man. The more you're down to have weird experiences, the cooler life becomes.
I think it's going to be our like first long form video, Julie.
Is you and I?
Sam, you've inspired us. We're going to do 100 new mentors and just give like shout outs.
Let's do it. That's awesome.
Yeah. Sam, real quick, rapid fire word association. Yeah. When I say mentor, what do you say?
I thought of Steve Jobs.
Okay. When I say mentee, what do you think of?
Me.
Sponsor?
HubSpot.
Nice. I knew it. I fucking knew it. And when I say coach?
Coach Wooden.
Yeah, I thought you might say that too. That is a unique rapid fire test right there. I love it. Yeah. We've never had anything like that before.
Oh my gosh, Sam, this was so fun. We have loved spending time with you and getting to know you, and we'll definitely be continuing to cheer you on. And we're so excited to see where you go next. So thank you so much for your time, Sam. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me on.
Here is a quick jump from our conversation. We all know that starting and running a business is hard. However, HubSpot CRM can make it easier, okay? HubSpot's HQ is in Boston, so you got to drop the R and say hard. So say it with me. Business is hard.
Hard?
Something like that. So let's make business easier. Stop searching for spreadsheets. Seriously, don't search for them. Instead, let HubSpot CRM provide real-time data at your fingertips. Now you can sync your teams across the customer journey and track contacts and track customers and send personalized emails in bulk. Now you can scale easier. HubSpot CRM can help you, and it's why more than 150,000 companies already use HubSpot CRM to run their businesses better. Julie, do you use HubSpot?
I do.
Are you and your business focused on your customers?
Yes.
Let's not work our businesses on hard mode. Let's make it easy. Get started for free at HubSpot.com today. And now, back to our episode. Julie, do you even need coffee after that interview?
I am kind of obsessed with Sam. Is that wrong? I want to go back in time and be 23 years old and be like his sidekick, because
you want to be a production assistant. You want to be a grip.
I want to be a Sam PA. I was so inspired by his energy, and there is this like warmth and connection about him and curiosity that just made me so happy to see. And I am so jazzed about his future and that he is in the world at his age working on connecting more humans. I am a huge fan. I actually want to meet his mom too. I think we'd be friends.
That might be too much. We'll see if that makes it into the final cut. Love it. Hey, Sam, it was great hanging out. Can I just text your mom?
She's got to be cool. She's got to be cool.
Okay, let's get into our 3 takeaways, because there's so much to take away from Sam. His casual confidence and just ability to warm up a room without trying to throw energy into it. That is a really special skill. And I know we both were kind of on fire after our discussion.
Yes.
So, Julie, what's your number 1 takeaway?
Oh my gosh. So after our interview, I went and deep dived his YouTube content on Jubilee. So I highly recommend it. 100 Friends. And in this video, he goes to New York, he goes to UCLA, he goes to a Trump rally. And his opening line is, "Hey, would you like to be friends? My name's Sam." And he says it everywhere he goes. And you know, there's some people who are like, no, especially in New York. But there's people who are like, yeah, okay, let's be friends. And so obviously that's a big line, right? Friends, that's a big deal. But it really reminded me of the bridge line. You just need that one line that you say to people that opens up a conversation. And I feel like that feels like the biggest hurdle to get across. But if you're able to get across it, you can have such great conversation. So it made me think a bit about in professional settings, if I'm at a conference, if I'm somewhere with people I don't know, we were just at the mentoring summit, I didn't know anybody there, just actually saying, "Hey, how's your day going?
What's up? What's going on?"
And I think it gets people to pause and be like, "How is my day going? Yeah, it's actually pretty good," or this, whatever. That's my line out in the world. And it's amazing how people kind of stop and then you can get into a conversation. Of course, you can say things like, "What do you think of the conference?" Or "I really like your shoes," or "Do you know where the coffee is?"
A sweet pet rock. Who knows? And I've always appreciated your line of "How is your day going?" because it brings it to a much more specific piece, like, "Oh, today," as opposed to I'm so used to kind of like an old school Boston line, just like "How are you?" And that's too broad of a question as often. So even Sam's very specific question of "Can we be friends?" it really allows people to just talk in this one moment and not necessarily or try to touch on a really broad subject, which might just be too all encompassing. And therefore people are like, "Yo, I'm out. I don't need to talk about this."
Totally. That's my line. That's my takeaway. Get a line you feel comfortable with, use it often, and see how it works. What about you, Jimmy? My God, what did you take away from this? I can't wait to hear this.
My takeaway was more about shining a spotlight and acknowledgement, and that the only way you're going to be able to change something is after you acknowledge it. This is very clear. We've heard this previously from guests about how to recover or when you're trying to get over an addiction or something. But my takeaway is how Sam so clearly brings up his acknowledgement of fear of failure, and that once you start talking about it, you can actually remove it. He makes it clear that everybody has fear of failure. There's nothing wrong with having it. There is a whole spectrum of fear of failure, and you are not weird if you are close to paralyzed by it or are basically Evel Knievel on the other end. It doesn't matter. You just need to talk about it. And by talking about it, you are light years ahead of most people. And you are going to be that much closer to whatever is on the other side of that fear. Just by saying, I'm a little nervous about something, just like almost before every intro or outro that we record, I'm like, oh, shoot, how are we going to make this?
Do you get nervous?
I get a little nervous. Yeah.
Are you afraid of me?
No, just like every time I go teach, every time I get in front of the class, sometime in the 2 hours before class starts, I'm like, oh no, here we go again. How am I going to mess this up? And I'm like, no, it's okay. You've done some. You already got some cookies in the cookie jar. Just reach in and grab one. It's going to be okay. You built up some resilience. But just saying, okay, it's here. It's okay. Fear of failure exists, and we can allow ourselves to all be stronger by it or weaker by fear of failure. Sam obviously chooses strength.
Absolutely. Yeah. He was wearing Heelys riding around New York City, which definitely demonstrates an absolute lack of fear, because the mom in me was like, oh God, he's going to fall. Do you remember Heelys?
No.
They're the shoes with the little wheel on the back that you like.
Wheels. Got you. I was like, people walk around in strappy wedges all the time in New York City. How is that dangerous?
I was like, oh no, Sam, don't fall. Acknowledging the fear of failure, or acknowledging fear and then getting past it, which I think really connects back to our outro, which is bringing our key takeaways from Sam back to our AugMentors 8 principles. I feel like Sam is uniquely qualified around the pitch, which was really about how do you ask somebody to be part of your life or to get to know you. I mean, if there's anybody that we've ever interviewed as straightforward as possible about asking somebody to join their crazy circus is definitely Sam.
And all our circuses are crazy, just to be clear. And yeah, Sam lays it out. He touches on the AugMentors principle, the pitch, and he makes it so simple by channeling a bit of Jacqueline Baker, the unintentional mentor. Just start. Be friendly without prejudice. Just show up and understand some people, for a variety of reasons that have nothing to do with you, may say that day, no, I don't want to be friends. You might just need to catch them the next day or 1 minute later or 1 year later. It doesn't matter, but it has no reflection on you. Therefore, you just need to start. Just pitch it. Just pitch it.
And I just suddenly had a whole montage in my head thinking about our spirit guide of pitch, which was QVC. And if you think of Sam Donner on a QVC show, wow, I want to see that one day. I think I'm going to pitch that to him. I don't know what he'd be selling, but
Heelys.
He'd do great.
And because in ways to get over some of that fear of failure around giving a bridge line is to do what's fun for you. If you do something that's fun for you, so for me, it's a lot easier to go up to random people if I am at a basketball court in a random park and just being like, who's got next? I can say that to anybody in the world, no problem. But if I need to go up at a random networking event to somebody at a table somewhere who's in a conversation, I'm going to be way more, reluctant to do that, just because I'm going to have so much more fun and I'm just happier at the basketball court.
Well, you could also ask the people at the networking event to play basketball.
Yeah. Who's got next?
Blow this place. I mean, it depends upon what kind of event. I think at the dietitian conference, you definitely get a lot of cross eyes, but it depends upon which event you're at. But yeah, I love that. I think just being comfortable, it's kind of bringing it all together. Have your bridge line, let go of a fear of failure, and just start the conversation, and who knows where it'll go. And definitely watch Sam 100 Friends, because it is actually really inspiring to watch somebody talk to that many strangers. I feel like it's like watching somebody do, pull-ups. Then you're like, okay, I can do pull-ups. If you watch an hour of people doing pull-ups.
If you watch enough videos of pull-ups, you're going to be able to do a pull-up. That's literally like Icarus. It's like, okay, I'm going to jump and I'll be able to fly. It's going to be great.
Hey, are you daring me to watch an hour of people doing pull-ups and then do a pull-up?
This sounds like great content for Sam.
I think watching people for an hour doing pull-ups, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I think it's great. And honestly, it's about curiosity compounded over time. If Sam does this just 5 times, it's not as interesting, but 100, it really shows that Sam cares about helping others see wonder in the world. And that's a powerful line where if you just, show up with a smile, allow some of your light to shine on somebody else, it's a beautiful thing.
Sam, we are following closely and cannot wait to see where you go next and are excited about what you're bringing into the world. So thanks for being part of our little journey.
Augmentors out.
Wow, you've made it this far, and we thank you. Hopefully you enjoyed our episode and discovered new ways to bring more authentic connection into your mentoring relationships. Want to tell them more, Jimmy?
Be an augmenter with us. Visit our website for the best interactive mentoring content at augmentors.us. Share our podcast with someone you care about. Like and subscribe. And yes, really, you following our show and writing a review, it's a big deal. Your actions provide us with the resources to continue our undefeated, unencumbered, prize-winning productions. We welcome questions and suggestions via email hi@augmentors.us or on social with our handle @AugmentorsHQ. We are most active and available on LinkedIn and YouTube. Shout out and earnest thank you to our intrepid producer, Erlin Cato. We appreciate you. Augmentors out.
See ya.